I'm 23 years old and I make $157,000 a year, my first job out of college as a software engineer. Going all the way back to 6th grade, I've always known I wanted to go into tech and specifically to be an engineer. In 6th grade, we did this thing called a time capsule where you write down 3 predictions about yourself for the future. I wrote that I wanted to be a computer engineer, that I wanted to go to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and that I had a crush on so-and-so. Well, I don't know what that girl's up to today, and I did end up attending that Institute of Technology. I did become a computer engineer, so I got 1 for 3. Fast forwarding to high school, I've always been a pretty good student. I graduated with a 95 average, a 4.0 unweighted GPA, and a 1550 SAT. I applied to be a computer engineer and was choosing between UCLA, Carnegie Mellon, and the Georgia Institute of Technology, my parents' alma mater. In the end, I ended up choosing Georgia Tech. But at this point, I still had no idea what I wanted to do, and I didn't even know that software engineering existed, let alone have written my first line of code. My freshman year, I took Intro to Programming in Python. It was part of my degree, so I took the class. At this point, I thought I wanted to be a chip designer. I wanted to work on graphics cards and processors. Freshman summer rolls around and I end up doing research in an artificial intelligence laboratory, and I was awful. I was of no help to them, and this did nothing in the way of actually advancing my passion for computer science. In sophomore year, I decided to take data structures and algorithms as it was the first class towards a CS minor. Looking back now, data structures and algorithms is the most important course before applying to a software engineering internship. Remember though, at this time, I thought I wanted to be a chip designer, so I went to the ECE career fair with my almost blank resume and got 1 interview. That interview was for a startup that created devices to see which parking spots were empty in massive parking lots. Not exactly the most exciting stuff, but even then, I didn't get the job. At this point, I felt like a failure. All my friends had internships lined up, and despite me having good grades, I had nothing to show for it. I was ranting to a friend who got a software engineering internship after her freshman year of college. She said, "Oh, well, I'm not going to be returning to my company. I wonder if I could refer you." She did, and sure enough, they took a chance on me and gave me an interview. I went to their global headquarters and had my first ever technical CS interview. They had me solve logic puzzles and actually made me write down code for a problem on a whiteboard. I later found out this was a LeetCode code style problem. I thought I bombed the interview. I couldn't even decide for the first 5 minutes whether I wanted to write in Java and Python because I wasn't good at either of them. Surprisingly, I got the job, and they offered me $27 an hour to be an intern there. This was an unfathomable amount of money for me at the time. During that summer, I worked on a team that built an internal tool for the development of company APIs. I used the .NET and Angular frameworks and coded mainly in C# and TypeScript. But the biggest thing I learned during this internship was how enterprise code is maintained and how the actual software engineering process works at scale. I realized that I wanted to be a software engineer. I worked for that company part-time that fall and returned next summer where they upped my salary to $28 an hour. By this point, I was pretty comfortable coding, and I realized that I didn't actually want to work for this company full-time. I also learned that I didn't really like front-end and would prefer to stay on the back-end side of the house. So when they gave me an offer of $92,000 to stay in Atlanta, I had no option but to turn it down. Going into senior year, it was time to grind. I started practicing LeetCode code, I built my own personal website, and then I started mass applying. I applied to Facebook, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and I actually got to the online assessment portion of each of those. However, I never made it past one of those online assessments. Once again, I began to feel like a failure. The imposter syndrome in computer science is some of the worst because you are surrounded by some of the brightest people you will ever meet. Not only that, they seem to all be working at FANG somehow. I decided maybe I wasn't ready for the field, so I applied and got into the Georgia Tech Master's Program for Computer Science and Machine Learning. This was my new plan. Have another year. Somebody reached out to me on LinkedIn and said, "Hey, you should apply to be part of our startup." I had never heard of the company before, but I didn't have an internship for that summer, so I figured I may as well apply. What followed were 2 intense technical style interviews with back-to-back LeetCode problems. But unlike the online assessments at those big companies, I was actually face-to-face with somebody and I could communicate with them. This allowed me to shine, and I ended up getting the internship. I'll never forget, I was on the ski slopes with some of my friends, and as I snowboarded down, I got the call that I got the job, and they were offering me $55 an hour. I interned there last summer and ended up loving the company. It was a cloud security startup, and it was a microservices approach where I could code in Python and Java. I got to work on a mission critical team during a dynamic part of the company. As the summer was wrapping up and I was preparing to start my master's that fall, something happened. The economy started tanking. The tech bubble had popped. So when my company offered me to start full-time immediately, after a lot of deliberation and some talks with my dad, sorry dad, I decided to take the job. The starting base salary, $148,000, not including bonus and not including options. But I did have to move. So I moved to San Francisco, Silicon Valley, the heart of startups. So now here we are. 6 months later, I just got my first raise and now I make $157,000 a year as a 23-year-old. I don't know where this industry will go or where this career will take me, but for right now, I'm planning on staying at this current company for the foreseeable future. So that's it. That's my journey. I would be remiss to ignore the fact that luck played a huge portion in my success, not only from the opportunities that I was given, but also from the fact that I have 2 college-educated parents who were able to pay my tuition so I didn't have to work while I was studying. If you have any other video ideas or topics you'd like to see, please leave them in the comments below. And as always, remember to subscribe and turn on that notification bell for more. Thanks.